My name is Matthew Mitchell, and I'm an Associate Professor of International Business and Strategy at Drake University's College of Business and Public Administration, and really just want to start off by saying thank you for being here this evening. Really appreciate your willingness to come and hear, one, about the launch of the Drake Global Data Hub, which is really exciting, but hopefully, and maybe more importantly, we're going to have a wonderful conversation with Ambassador Darcy Vedder, who's a Drake alum, and so we're going to subject you to a little propaganda early, 10 minutes to tell you about some of our student work that we've been working on for the past 2 years, and then we'll get to the main event. And at that point, I'll turn it over to Professor Jeff Kaplan to introduce Darcy Vedder. So it should be a fun evening. Hopefully you got enough food. If you didn't, feel free to get up and walk around. It's really exciting also to be in this space, the Shivers practice facility, which is a new space for Drake, and I think just a wonderful venue to do this sort of activity. So I'm going to tell you, first of all, I think this is the rough schedule of events. We'll probably move through these a little bit more quickly and definitely have you out of here by 7 or a little bit later. We'll definitely have opportunities to have a little bit more food and conversation afterwards, but this is the itinerary. I'm going to tell you for about 10 minutes about the Drake Global Data Hub. The Drake Global Data Hub is a project that was inspired by student work, also inspired by some work in strategic planning for Drake's internationalization strategic plan, also Vision 2020, and this was about 3 or 4 years ago. And the idea behind Drake's internationalization strategic plan at that point was to have Drake be the center of global knowledge in our community. And this was an outgrowth of that in ways that we could fill some gaps in our own community around, how are we connected to the rest of the world? And so that's, I think, what the Drake Global Data Hub is. It was started by Brianna Mueller, who's one of our famous women's basketball players, as an independent study, and that was very exciting for her. Aligned with the Greater Des Moines Partnership's Global DSM plan, so the plan to attract talent to this area and also support our small and medium-sized businesses to grow globally. It fills needs for the global data at the state and local level, and ultimately it was a project that was adopted by Drake International Management students and has carried over for about 2 years now. To date, we've profiled, I think, from the very beginning up until now, nearly 200 or over 200 businesses, individuals, nonprofits, and counting. So this, I think, work continues. Here's a little graphic of the Vision 2020 that originally supported this work, and I know we've moved beyond this vision, but Drake is a global data hub right there in the middle, supports our community's efforts at developing global talent, enhancing visibility and facilitating connections, addressing pressing global issues, and fostering intercultural engagement. It fills some needs in our community and actually gaps that we don't have very good data on how our businesses, our individuals, our organizations are connected to the rest of the world. Iowa SourceLink, put out by Iowa Economic Development Authority, it exists, and I can't say much more than that in terms of the ability to use the data out of Iowa SourceLink. There's good data in there, but how to use it is a little bit more difficult. And then the Greater Des Moines Partnership also has a lot of data that they use, but still it's not available to the public. And this was the very first image produced by Brianna. In the visioning stage for what this Drake Global Data Hub could be, she created this image, and she said, I would really like to see, and you actually can't see the map very well, but how our community is connected to different communities around the world. She said maybe Canada, becomes red and Mexico is orange, and then, maybe if we have a lot of trade and exchange and a lot of folks moving back and forth between China and Iowa, maybe China becomes really, really dark. And I want you to remember this image because in a little bit, we had a few students put these images together for tonight, and we've really kind of built on this idea and really have a good sense of where our community is connected most globally. The data collection process, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it was an interview and a survey process. We sent out digital surveys through Qualtrics, also did one-on-one interviews with a lot of individuals, organizations, etc. So this was some of the survey questions. Is your company or organization currently involved in any of the global activities listed below? So things like importing, exporting, licensing, engaging, etc. Some more survey questions, and then here's the fun stuff: selected findings. So the first thing that we see, I think, in our community among those organizations surveyed, we have the most globally connected industries and the least globally connected industries. So maybe it's no surprise that 75% of all insurance companies that we surveyed were connected globally in some way, so they have a global presence. They write policies in other parts of the world. They own subsidiaries or are a subsidiary of a global company. So that was pretty exciting. I think nonprofits, fabricated products, financial services, and professional services round out the top 5 most globally connected industries in our community. And when I say our community, we really threw the net open wide. It was all of Iowa, but most centered in kind of the central Greater Des Moines area, so the metropolitan statistical area, which I think comprises about 20 counties, okay? The least globally connected, we have 0% retail connection. So the retail organizations that we profiled, they did not identify any global connection. But if you've taken any of our classes here at Drake, you'll know, if I'm selling things, maybe apparel, garments, a lot of those, raw materials are sourced globally. So I think, retail may not have, selling abroad, but definitely they're sourcing products from abroad. Construction, healthcare, real estate, printing and publishing round out the what we call the least globally connected, at least perceived by respondents. And then here are the fun maps. So when you think about central Iowa and Iowa in general, and the countries that we are most connected to through sales, it's these 10 countries. So the United States, obviously, Canada, that doesn't have a number, China, Mexico, United Kingdom, Germany, France, Brazil, Australia, and Japan. So, goods and services that we are selling abroad, these are the top 10 countries that central Iowa, that Iowa businesses and nonprofits provide to the rest of the world. And here's our map, okay? So the top 10 countries in different shades. Again, it's no surprise, the US is number 1, and then, different gradations beyond there. And you see kind of sales, a lot in Europe. Obviously China, Japan, Australia, and Brazil kind of round out the top 10, along with Mexico. Top 10 countries in terms of global connectivity in current operations are just a touch different. I think you got some different kind of switches between Canada and China, but the United States obviously number 1, and then China, Mexico, United Kingdom, and so on and so forth. So when we see the connectivity based on operations, this is what the map looks like there. And I think we weren't able to get Brianna here tonight, but she would be very, very excited to see these maps kind of come into fruition and become a reality. If we go to asking those companies that are serving abroad, that are working abroad, how they found those global markets, so their preferred exploration methods, the number 1 thing, overwhelmingly, how companies moved abroad was by connecting with their personal network. And we didn't find that necessarily surprising, but if you're thinking about taking some of this data and making recommendations to state, local governments, it's hard to craft a policy or somehow support building out that personal network, but there are ways to do it, right? Things like taking trade delegations or supporting financing for trade shows or supporting networking events to build that personal network. So all of these are kind of identified exploration methods that businesses, organizations, nonprofits use to explore opportunities abroad. If I'm going to give a recommendation to my students who want to work globally, you know, it's right there. You know, most companies and organizations identify their own personal network is the one thing that took them further afield. And so you know, definitely developing your personal network is important, which is kind of why we're here. Top reasons for not going global, which was kind of a fun finding. Uncertainty and risk aversion. So I think uncertainty comes with lack of training or exposure, and that was, I think, a key finding that we saw throughout the qualitative comments. Sometimes they just didn't have the opportunity to learn about new markets, or they're too busy doing what they're doing here locally to think about going abroad. You would divert resources from domestic operations. They claim that their goods and services aren't exportable. Then there might be restrictions on forming partnerships or joint ventures. And then finally, I think we talk a lot about the risk associated with if you take your good or service abroad, that it may be stolen in some serious way. So the insufficient protection of intellectual property. Last, I think, statistic and map that I want to show you, which I think is actually pretty exciting, also asked our survey respondents what their most promising markets are. So not the ones that they are in currently, but the ones that they want to go to next. So again, if I'm going to kind of cue in my students, these are the places that you want to focus on in order to support their operations to go global into the future. And so obviously, I think, well, maybe not surprisingly, Canada, but surprisingly, they put United States as second. So for the ones that are looking to go global, the majority, or the highest, the country with the highest interest was Canada, China, Mexico, United Kingdom, and others. So kind of last heat map here in terms of the areas that demonstrate the most promise. Still, I think with the current news of today, with the meeting with President Xi and President Trump in Florida, China obviously ranks very, very high in all of these. I'll kind of close the statistics portion with this. Again, recommendations to our students. Those top 5 most desired skill sets for organizations that are trying to go global are things like cross-cultural communication and negotiations. So that'll be a fun kind of skill to talk about later with Darcy. Foreign languages, always near the top there. Diversity and inclusion skill sets. One thing that we didn't expect was this desired skill set around international project management. And that's something that we've taken to heart and really thought about how to work with our students to develop a skill set around international project management. And then specific regional and national expertise. With about a quarter of the respondents indicating plans to hire students with a global mindset, or plans to hire employees with a global mindset. Other findings, I think, size of the firm matters. So generally, the larger firms are more global and more globally connected. They have the resources and capabilities to drive that global connection. There's actually good perceived support on behalf of these organizations for going global, and that was refreshing for us as international business practitioners, that people believe the community supports their interest in going abroad. But I think they also know that they need additional education and training and assistance from policy. I've got a few global stories, but I think I want to just maybe wrap up here because I want to turn the mic over. There's lots of organizations that are global, okay? This, company, medium-sized business, we ask them, are you global? It's like, no, we are not global. Okay. So at first we took that as the right answer. And then you kind of go back and you say, but do you do anything globally? Are you selling abroad? Are you importing from abroad? Well, actually our founder created this nonprofit and we spun it off from the company, and they're providing these modular homes to people all throughout Africa. So, well, I guess, yeah, we are kind of global in that way. There's a few other amazing stories. Iowa Computer Gurus was born global, so they were kind of a high-tech startup early on, and they went global a year after it started. But in reality, I mean, they started on the web and immediately started servicing clients all over the world. And this born global phenomenon, you don't have to take 10, 20, 30 years to build a global capability. You can start immediately, and your entire market is the world. And then you get into the nonprofit space. I mean, just celebrating some of the organizations in our community that are serving the world in just amazing ways. So Blessman Ministries was a nonprofit started by Dr. Jim and Beth Blessman. They partner with Iowa businesses and organizations to bring resources to South Africans and do a lot of things around micro enterprises and mission trips. And they're definitely looking to expand to other countries. The China Iowa group, and then our own, I think, we are presenting here as part of the Nelson Institute, and the Nelson family has an amazing story about starting their business in a washing machine, right? It's a chemical business, and they threw some ingredients into the washing machine, started the process, and have built it in just
but don't try that at home, please.
Chemical and supplements business, and just opened a brand new beautiful headquarters in our community serving the entire world. I'll finish with these two thoughts. My main takeaway from this is our students repeatedly got the answer, no, we are not global, to the question of, are you a global organization? And for the first semester, we really puzzled on that and kind of took no for the answer. And then, through working with a few more of these businesses and students like these that didn't give up, they kind of asked the next question, well, do you do this, or do you do that? Do you sell abroad, or do you serve abroad, or is your philanthropy abroad? And then the answers started rolling in, well, yeah, of course we do that. But they didn't identify that they were global at the beginning. And that's fascinating. I think we as a community sometimes shortchange ourselves by just assuming and maybe verbalizing that we are not globally oriented. We don't serve global markets, or we aren't affected by global markets. And I think that's in some ways short-sighted. The best example was a real estate company. And one of our students went to the real estate company and said, do you have global operations? Are you globally connected? And, no, we are not global. We are a real estate company. And the student said, yeah, but on your website, right under the title of your business, it says, providing real estate services worldwide. I don't understand, how are you not? And they said, oh, well, we're owned by a global company, and we offer real estate services worldwide. Maybe we are global. Come on, people! So I think my takeaway is we still have a lot of work to do in terms of educating our community, and in terms of supporting and celebrating our kind of global connections that we do have, because we have a lot of them. And we, as a Central Iowa community, as Central Iowa organizations, and Iowa in general, serve through goods and our services every single country in the world. We only profiled about 200 countries. About 200 companies and nonprofits. But out of those 200 companies and nonprofits, they sell their goods and services and provide service through nonprofits to every single country in the world. And that's something to be proud about. That is something I think we can all take pride in, and really have an obligation to continue that conversation about just how globally connected we really are. Lessons learned, we're inextricably linked to the world around us. We might not always recognize that connection, and we have an obligation as members of the Drake community, as students of international business, international relations, and global citizens, to continue to educate the community around us. I think the next steps for the Drake Global Data Hub are to continue profiling organizations and moving from only collecting the data to helping them grow their own organizations globally. Fortunately, I'm on sabbatical next year, and so Professor Kaplan is going to be teaching this course. And I think, shifting the mindset from collecting data to identifying the needs of these organizations to work on projects for them to support their ambitions to grow globally. So with that, I really do appreciate your willingness to listen, and I'm going to turn it over to Professor Kaplan to introduce Darcy Vetter. But before we do that, I would like to ask you to kind of provide a warm thank you and gratitude to all the students that worked together to put this event together and work on this Drake Global Data. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. I think I've had most of you